Hello, I'm Mike and this is Will. We are the Tabletop Donkeys.
Hello.
And we're bringing you issue 11 of Warhammer 40,000 Combat Patrol today. This issue came with 2 new paints, Corax White and Leadbelcher base paints, so we'll be adding those to our models. And in today's game we'll be learning about the command phase and objectives. So looking through the issue first, we have our painting guide for this issue, where we're adding our 2 new paints to the Space Marines. So starting with Leadbelcher, this is going to be over all of the sort of mechanical parts, bits of weaponry and sword blades and so forth on the Infernus Marines, also some of the vents on the back of their power packs, and also the sides of the helmet. And again, for the captain, parts of his Stormbolter and his sword, and as well as some other vents and piping and bits of trim or the crest above his head. And again, for the librarian, the Force Axe blade and the casing of his Stormbolter, and some Corax White on the librarian and the captain for the Crux Terminatus, the sigil on their left shoulder, also on the captain's right knee as well, and also going over the captain's right shoulder pads as well. You need to base coat that in Corax White. And the Corax White, you do need to do multiple thin coats because it can get quite thick and blotchy. It does tend to clump up a bit. So you can see them up to that point, starting to look more complete. Still need some more bits of detail, like some leather bits to come. And then some background on the Cult Mechanicus. So in the 41st millennium, knowledge is closely guarded. They are responsible for sort of maintaining the technology of the Imperium, but the use of technology in the future has morphed such to the point that they actually sort of worship technology rather than sort of innovate as you might expect. So while they still revere the Emperor as divine, they also worship machines and see machines surpass the weakness of the flesh, and adding mechanical parts themselves as part of their faith. So the Mechanicus worship the Omnissiah, who is a mysterious divine being responsible for the motive force, which they believe drives all machines and all things. And most members of the Mechanicus regard the Emperor as the Omnissiah, or at least as a physical manifestation of the machine god's will. Then some background on the bioweaponry of the Tyranids. They are adapted for every enemy they come across, firing acid or living creatures as well, capable of finding cracks in armour. It has many advantages, such as you don't need to worry about supply lines because most creatures simply breed more ammunition, really. So you can see some of the range weapons at the top with the flesh borer that the termagants use that fire beetles, whereas the devourer below fires swarms of maggots. You have the venom cannon that fires crystallized acid that destroys the target through sheer force, and then if it's not, it will be corroded by all the acid. And then some of the melee weapons, so you have the scything talons that are designed for the user to attack at speed, the rending claw that's good at punching through armor, and the bone sword, which has a sort of psychic field around it that is very deadly. And then a little short story of a squad of Terminators venturing into an Imperial ship that has been infested with Tyranids, usually Gene Stealers, and they need to proceed very carefully because the Gene Stealers are capable of piercing their armour. So you can pause and read through it there to see how they deal with the cramped, gloomy interior of the ship. But now hand you over to Will, where he'll be teaching us some new rules and he'll get us into today's game.
So we learn about some more important rules concepts in this issue, specifically phases and objectives. So starting with phases, the game of Warhammer 40,000 is broken down into turns, and each of those turns is broken down further into phases. And a phase is basically where a certain kind of thing happens in the turn, and we've already kind of seen this in our games already. The new one that's being introduced in this game is the command phase, which is where certain things happen, like command abilities and things that we haven't learnt about yet, but it's also where you would score points for controlling objectives, which is the other major thing we'll be introducing. So here is the turn breakdown for a player's turn, and 2 turns in a row, one for each player, makes up what's called a battle round. And the game of Warhammer 40,000 is broken down into battle rounds. Typically you'll have a set number of them in a game, and each one consists of a turn for each player. And a player turn is broken down into phases, and they always go in the same sequence. So we start with the command phase, which, as I said before, is where you do some special things and then often score points, control objectives and so forth. Then there's the movement phase, where you get to move your models around the battlefield. The shooting phase, where all your units get to shoot, the charge phase where you charge into melee, and then the fight phase where your units will fight. So most of those we've already seen, it's just adding the command phase onto the top, and then the player turn ends and it passes to the next player. And if it was the second player's turn in the battle round, then you go on to a new battle round. And then we also have objectives, which are important points on the battlefield that your models fight over, usually to score victory points, to see who actually wins the game, but you can imagine that those represent control of important objectives and battlefield features and so forth. So normally objectives will be a 40mm diameter circle, like the ones shown on this page here, and they're usually numbered just for convenience. And this issue does include some numbered objective markers in the back cover, which you can cut out or photocopy or whatever you want to do with them. And to control an objective, you basically just need to have a model within 3 inches of the edge of the 40mm circle. So as you can see in this example, this Infernus Marine is within 3 inches of the circle, but the Tyranid Prime is not. So the Space Marine is contesting the objective and the Tyranid Prime is not. But obviously, if both players have models within 3 inches of an objective, there has to be a way to work out who actually controls it. And the way to do that is using the little characteristic called OC that you will find on the datasheets for all of our units. It's the last one in the set of boxes immediately below the unit's name. And the OC for a unit is how much control over an objective each model in that unit can exert. So for an Infernus squad, they have an OC of 1 per model, whereas Termagants have an OC of 2. And then to work out who controls an objective, you add up the total OC of all of the models within 3 inches of the objective, and then whoever has the highest one is in control. So as you can see in this picture, the Space Marines have 3 Infernus Marines of OC1, so they have a control of 3, but the Tyranids have 2 Termagants of OC2, so they have a control of 4, and therefore they control the objective. Or in the case of a tie, neither player controls the objective, and you have to kill some of your enemy to take over. And I also mentioned that you might score victory points for controlling objectives, and these are a way of basically determining who wins the game, depending on who scores the most points during the game. And there are several ways you can track these. This issue gives you some counters that you can use to keep track of how many points you have, or you can write them down on some paper, and we'll do something slightly different for you so you can keep track of the points in the games, which we'll show you once obviously we get to the game. Then we're on to our game, Scenario 7 Objective Secured. So there are valuable biological samples littering the battlefield in our abandoned outpost. The Tyranids are going to try and gather them so they can use them to create new and more dangerous biomorphs, whereas the Space Marines, they're looking to design countermeasures against the Tyranid organisms. So obviously we're trying to secure some objectives, so we're going to need 3 of our objective markers that come with this issue, as well as the models that I'll show you on the battlefield in a second, and also their data sheets and 2 of our Battlefield Essentials cards to represent terrain. And victory points are scored in this game for controlling objectives. You score 5 for controlling 1 objective, 5 for controlling 2 objectives, and another 5 for controlling more than your opponent. So obviously that's a maximum of 15 per turn. And it says that the game will only last for 5 battle rounds. The one with the most points at the end of 5 battle rounds wins. And here is the battle map showing the setup of the terrain and the objectives and all the models. So you can see there are 3 objectives, one right in the centre of the board and then 1 in each of the opposite corners. So objective 1 down the bottom left and objective 3 up in the top right. There are 2 terrain cards further towards the centre of the board from those 2 objectives. And then for the Space Marines, we have the Space Marine Captain, the Librarian and the Infernus squad. And then for the Tyranids, all of the Tyranid units, being the Bargaunts, the Termagants, the Tyranid Prime and the Von Ryan's Leapers, and they all start in the locations shown on the map here. And the Space Marines get the first turn, so then their turn breakdown is as follows. So the command phase happens first, and that's where you're going to score points in this game for controlling objectives. So in the command phase, you add up the OC of all models you have on an objective, and then see who controls it, as we saw before. And it mentions here that because the Space Marines start in control of 1 objective, they're going to score 5 points in their first turn. And then they will move and shoot and charge and fight as normal, but it does suggest in here that you want to consider attacking units that are controlling objectives or are going to be a threat to your units that are controlling objectives, because that's obviously the point of this game. Keep the objectives in mind. And here's an example of their first turn, so the Captain and the Librarian moving towards the centre of the board, while the Infernus Marines remain on objective 3, so as to continue controlling it in their next turn, because of course if they move away, then the Space Marines will lose control of it and won't get any points for that particular objective. And then the same for the Tyranid turn, so once again, score points for the objective you control in your own deployment zone, and then you'll be moving, shooting, charging and fighting with many of the same considerations, although obviously the Tyranid units are slightly different. They're faster and more mobile, but a little bit more fragile in most cases, so bear that in mind. And following on from the Space Marine move, there's an example of how the Tyranid player might be able to take advantage of this by sending the fast units, the Tyranid Prime and the Von Ryan's Leapers, to go and try and take objective 3 away from the Space Marines by killing the Infernus Marines. While instead, as it says here, they're basically using the Termagants as a meat shield to keep the Captain and the Librarian busy, while the more dangerous units pick on the Infernus Marines and try and kill them off. Of course, the Termagants also have an OC of 2, so by taking the central objective with them, you're going to make them difficult to shift away, because you have to kill basically all of them to take the objective back. And then once the Tyranid turn is over, then that's the end of the battle round. So that'll be 1 battle round, and then we'd move on to battle round 2 and do that for another 4 afterwards. And here we have our victory outcomes, so you can see what those say if you want and decide which side you want to be rooting for. I'll also show you on the back page the cutout objective markers and victory point tokens that I mentioned earlier, so you can either cut these out or photocopy them and use them in your games, stick them onto some card perhaps to make them a bit more durable. But we will get the board set up and our models deployed and then show you our game. So here we are back in our abandoned outpost. We flipped the board round relative to the picture you saw earlier because I'm playing the Space Marines and I'm on this side of the board. So you can see the 3 objectives, 1 up in the top right of your picture, 2 in the centre and 3 in the bottom left. We're actually using the cutout objectives from Imperium magazine, the previous one, because they came pre-printed on card and we didn't want to cut up our magazine. We've also got our terrain cards with the additional 3D terrain that we've made to make everything look a little bit more interesting, but obviously just as a reminder they don't come normally with the magazine. Taking a closer look at the Space Marine units, we've got the 5 Infernus Marines down here on Objective 3 in the bottom left corner, and over on the other side the Captain and the Librarian in Terminator armour. And facing them on the other side of the board we have the Tyranids. So here, their right flank as it were, we have the 3 Von Ryan's Leapers and the Tyranid Prime. And on the other side, the Termagants and the 5 Barb Gaunts surrounding Objective 1 up in the top right corner. And the Space Marines get the first turn in the first battle round, which we'll be keeping track of on the overlay that you can see. And you can also see the use for the numbers on top of our dice tray as we head into Space Marines turn 1. So starting off with our new command phase, where I will score some points for objectives I control, and of course, as it said in the example, I control 1 objective right at the start of the game, which is Objective 3. So I gain 5 victory points, and no more for now, because I do not hold more than the Tyranids, because they also hold 1, and you will see both the control of objectives and the number of victory points in the overlay as well. And then we move on to my movement phase, where I have, unlike the example, moved the Infernus Marines up to get 2 of them in range of the Von Ryan's Leapers, but a couple of them are staying back, so we do still control Objective 3, because that will be important in the next turn. But then the Captain is going to advance, because I want him over by the Infernus Marines, to hopefully be able to protect them a bit better. And his advance roll will be a 4, so he can go 9. So that advance roll is enough to get the Captain there, but as you can see with our range ruler placed, he is just about within 3 inches of Objective 2 as well, so I will take control of that, which means the Tyranids will have to, well, either kill the Captain or just put more things on the objective in order to take it themselves. And finally the Librarian has moved up normally 5 inches. He's quite a long way away from everything else at the moment, but he has a really long range with his smite, so he's still going to be able to do something with it. So with that being all my movement, we will move on to the shooting phase, where the Librarian is going to go first. He's going to use his smite power to target the Von Ryan's Leapers, and he will use the focused Witchfire version of it. But he will shoot his Stormbolter at the Termagants, because it's not very good against the Leapers. So he'll get d6 attacks, 3. Hitting on 3s, oh, they all hit. He's already doing better than his previous outing. Wounding on 3s, because Strength 6 versus Toughness 5. Gives 2 wounds at an AP of -2 for the focus profile.
This is on the Leapers, so 6s to save. Nope.
D3 damage each, so 1 at a time. The first one does 3, oh, that'll kill a whole Leaper. The second one does 1, and does 1 wound to a second Leaper. But then he did use the hazardous version of his Witchfire, so on a roll of 1 he takes 3 wounds. No, he's fine. 1 Leaper destroyed, and 1 takes a wound. Then we've got the Stormbolter firing at the Termagants, and it is within 12 inches, so we will get the extra 2 shots from Rapid Fire 2, hitting on 3s. 3 hits. Toughness 3 Termagants, so wounding on 3s. It's a Strength 4, oh, 3 wounds with no AP.
3 5+ armour saves, which I made none of. 3 dead Termagants. Take away those 3 in the end.
The Captain advanced, so he's unable to shoot, but my 2 Infernus Marines at the front of the unit are in range. Only one of them is in range of the Von Ryan's Leapers, because one of them was killed, but the other one, the one closest to the Captain, is also in range of the Tyranid Prime, so we'll shoot at him instead. Well, so 1 at the Leapers, 1 at the Tyranid Prime. So d6 automatic hits on the Leapers, 2, winning on 4s, 1, with no AP.
4+ armour. Nope, take 1 damage.
And d6 hits on the Tyranid Prime, 6. Also toughness 5, so winning on 4s. 4.
4+ armour, made them all.
No damage to the Tyranid Prime. Then that will bring us to the charge phase, where the Librarian is within 12 inches of both the Termagants and the Barb Gaunts. He's actually going to declare a charge on the Barb Gaunts. They need a big number to get there, but there's not really anything to lose by attempting it. Probably looking at like a 10 or an 11 here. Oh, well, an 11, okay. Well, that mighty roll was enough to get the Librarian over into combat with the Barb Gaunts, so he makes it to here, but then I won't have any more charges, so we'll be on to the fight phase where the Librarian will get to fight first, since he charged. 4 attacks with his Force Weapon, hitting on 3s. We only managed to hit once.
He's tired after running that far.
A wounding on a 3, that's a Strength 6, that's a wound, with an AP of -1 on a Barb Gaunt.
5+ saved.
No damage.
So Barb Gaunts get to pile in. I think only 3 can get in because this one can't move faster terrain. So we'll only have 3 attacks on the Librarian. Hitting on 4s? No.
But that will be the end of the Space Marine turn, because all the fighting is done and there's nothing else to do. And so we'll be on to Tyranids turn 1. So first we have the command phase, where the Tyranids will score points, and although the Librarian did manage to make it into melee, he only has an OC of 1, and the Barbarians also have an OC of 1 each. So it's 5-1 on objective 1 for the Tyranids, so they still retain control of it, and will score 5 victory points.
So my movement phase, the Von Ryan's Leapers are going to go towards the Infernus Marines. Hopefully try and cut down the Marines' numbers. The Marines only have 3 units, so we can kill one. Basically limits the number of objectives the Marines can actually control. And over here, the Barbarians are going to fall back. They can't shoot, but they're no good in melee, and they might just get killed by the Librarian. The winged Tyranid Prime has moved across to come and deal with the Librarian, while the Termagants have moved to get some of them in range of the objective in the middle. They have a high OC, so it should be easy enough for them to take control of it.
Yeah, the Captain only has an OC of 1 as well.
And also, actually, now the Barbarians have fallen back, the Termagants can shoot the Librarian as well and try and soften him up a bit. The Termagants have 1 shot each, and I've got 7 with their flesh borers. 7 shots hitting on 4s, shooting at the Librarian, as I said. 3 hits, wounding on 4s, because strength 5 versus toughness 5. 1 wound, no AP.
So a 2+ save. Oh, just about. So the Librarian's unharmed so far.
In the charge phase, I'll roll for the Von Ryan's Leapers first. They're going to charge the Infernus Marines. I mean, they're probably in. With a 10, they're definitely in. Tyranid Prime is going to charge the Librarian as well. He's in with a 9. So the Von Ryan's Leapers charge can just about get both of them in within an inch of the Infernus Marines, staying an inch away from the captain so he doesn't get to fight. While the Winged Tyranid Prime is moving, he couldn't fail, but he might as well get himself on the objective as well, just in case. I'll do the Von Ryan's Leapers first. Both of my units that charge get to go first, so it doesn't really matter which one I do. So 12 attacks from the 2 remaining Leapers, hitting on 3s. 11 hits, wounding on 3s. That's only 5 wounds at AP -1.
5 saves, looking for 4s. Failed 3, so 1 Marine died and another one has taken a wound.
Tyranid Prime, 6 attacks hitting on 2s, hitting 5, and wounding on 3s, because it's strength 6. Hitting 3 at -1.
So 3+ saves for the Librarian. Oh dear, we failed 2.
So that's 2 damage each, that's 4 damage.
Yeah, he has 5 wounds in total, so he's down to 1. And I get to fight back. I'll start with the Librarian, hitting the Tyranid Prime back. 4 attacks hitting on 3s. Only managed 1 hit again. Wounds on a 3. Dead.
5+ save. Nope.
So D3 damage from this. 1 on the Tyranid Prime.
So it's down to 5.
And then one of the Infernus Marines has piled in to get in range to strike the Leapers, but one will stay back, so I maintain control of the objective. And 3 Marines have 9 attacks between them, hitting on 3s. 6 hits, wounding on 5s. 2.
2 4+ armor saves. Failed 1, so I do lose another Leaper.
Well, that will be the end of the Tyranid turn, with all the fighting concluded. Lost a Marine and the Librarian is badly wounded, as we head into Battle Round 2 and Space Marines turn 2. So in my command phase, I still only hold Objective 3, because the Infernus Marines are still in range of it. Objective 2, while the Captain is on it, he only has OC 1, and there are at least 2 Termagants on it with OC 2 each, so it remains in Tyranid control, and I will only get 5 victory points, because I hold 1, which is not more than the Tyranids. Then in my movement phase, the Infernus Marines are going to fall back out of melee with the Leaper, because otherwise it will probably beat them, or at the very least do quite a bit more damage before it goes down. And the Captain's going to stay where he is, because he's going to have to kill it most likely, because the Infernus Marines obviously can't shoot since they fell back. It is going to give up control of Objective 2, but only 1 Termagant would have to survive to deny him Objective 2 anyway, so he's probably not going to take it. Whereas the Librarian will stay in melee over here. Maybe he'll just make some better armor saves and survive against the odds. We'll have to see. Falling back's not going to help though, because he'll just get shot and charged again. So the only shooting I have, being the only unit not in melee or falling back, is the Captain, who will turn his Stormbolter on the Termagants. So he is also within 12 inches with the Stormbolter, so he has 4 shots. He hits on 2s though, because he's very good at this. There we go. And wounding on 3s. 4.
5+ armor. Made 2. Only 2 die. Yeah, those 2.
Then we're on to the charge phase. I'm not actually going to bother rolling for the Captain. He just needs to go like that and get into contact with the Leaper. And then, of course, he gets to go first because he charged. Captain has 6 attacks, hitting on 2s. They all hit. And winning on 4s, strength 5 versus toughness 5. 3 at AP -2.
So 6s. I made 1, but that's not going to be enough.
4 damage will kill the Leaper. And then the Captain can make his Consolidate move, so he will go towards the closest enemy model and also get onto the objective. So he is still on Objective 2 after doing that, moving 3 inches towards the Termagants. But then we are on to units that did not charge, and because it's the Space Marine turn, the Tyranids get to pick first, so the Tyranid Prime gets to fight.
6 attacks, hitting on 2s. 5 again. 3s to wound. 4 wounds this time with AP -1.
Well, the Librarian has to pass all of his 3+ saves. He failed 1, so the Librarian is killed. So that does leave the Tyranids firmly in control of Objective 1 at the end of the Space Marine turn, so we'll be on to Tyranids turn 2. In the Tyranids command phase, they hold 2 objectives, Objectives 1 and 2, which is more than the Space Marines, so they gain 5 for 1 objective, 5 for 2 objectives, and 5 for holding more. The maximum score in turn 2, bringing them up to 20 points.
So my movement, the Barb Gaunts are going to move forward just so they can all see the Infernus Marines and get in range. It'll make them worse at shooting, but I'd rather have more shots where they were before. Only about 2 could shoot, so I think more shots is better. The Tyranids shuffled around a bit. I've still got 3 on the objectives and they're all in range of the Infernus Marines as well. And the Tyranid Prime is going to have to go into the middle and hold up the captain, I think. I'm actually going to start the shooting phase with the Termagants, just because they've got a slightly shorter range. If I kill too many Infernus Marines with the Barb Gaunts, they might end up out of range. Hitting on 4s, oh we all missed. And then the Barb Gaunts, d6 shots each.
Yeah, not getting any additional hits, shots from the blast rule because the Infernus Marines are below 5 models now.
Yeah, and that's going to be 20 shots. 20 shots hitting on 4s. 11 hits, wounding on 3s. Well, that's going to be 8 wounds with no AP.
So 8 saves, 3+. Failed 3, so the wounded Marine will die, and another one will go down as well. So that leaves only 2 Infernus Marines left, and then we'll be on to the charge phase.
With the Tyranid Prime, we'll charge the captain. And he's in with a 9. So Tyranid Prime will go in like that, get a little bit closer to the Infernus Marines. That charge would have been enough to get to the Infernus Marines, but I didn't declare them as a target, so I'll have to go into the captain. 6 attacks on 2s, 5 again, he's very consistent. Wounding on 3s. Oh, only 2.
3+ saves. Oh dear, failed both. Captain takes 4 damage, he's down to 2 wounds remaining. Captain can fight back, has 6 attacks on 2s as well. They all hit. Wounding on 4s though. 5 at -2.
Need to make 3 of these to live on 6s. No.
Oh, that's actually 10 damage, yeah.
Goodbye, Tyranid Prime.
So the captain's down to 2 wounds, but he does manage to finish off the Tyranid Prime and then consolidates 3 inches again towards the Termagants. But that will be the end of the Tyranid turn and of the battle round. So that means that we're on to Space Marines turn 3. I still only hold 1 objective in my command phase though, which is Objective 3, because there are too many Termagants on Objective 2, so I only get 5, which will be 15 in total. And then the 2 Infernus Marines can just about both get in range of the Termagants, while one of them still holds Objective 3, and the captain has moved round the Termagants so he can hopefully go and charge the Barb Gaunts. Although if he fails his charge, he'll still be on Objective 2, so it's not the end of the world if that does happen. But we've got some shooting first, with the Infernus Marines to start at the Termagants. 2d6 automatic hits, 3. Wounding on 3s, 2 with no AP.
5+ armour, fail both.
So the captain will have to shoot them as well with his Stormbolter on 2s with 4 shots. Oh, he only hit twice, so he can't actually kill them all. And he did wound twice.
5s, made 1.
Kills another one. So with 2 Termagants left, the captain will have to charge them. And he's in with an 8. So then he has 6 attacks on 2s. He missed once this time. And he wounded the Termagants on 3s. He gets 3, and they can't make their save because of the 5+ and -2. Can't roll a 7.
Final 2 die.
So that leaves the captain on Objective 2, and he's not going to consolidate because he's on the objective, which is where I want him to be. But that's the end of my turn, and we're on to Tyranids turn 3. Tyranids hold 1 objective still, so gaining another 5 victory points, going up to 25.
Yeah, I'm not going to move, and it's a tough decision whether I kill the Infernus Marines, or I think I have to try and kill the captain, because if I kill the Infernus Marines, sure, the Marines will only have 1 character left, but he can just come in and charge them, and probably kill the Barb Gaunts fairly easily, and then even if there's only 1 Marine left, I don't have any models left, and he'll win on his own, so I'm going to have to kill the captain, I think. So 5d6 shots. That's not as many as we need. That's going to be 16. 16 shots hitting on 3s.
Yep, this is because they have the heavy rule and they didn't move.
Yep.
First time we've actually seen that.
So 12 hits. Wounding on 4s. Oh, that's only 2.
The captain did roll a double 1 for his armour saves before though. And he's rolled a single 1, so he's down to 1 wound remaining. Which means that that's the end of the Tyranid turn. On to Space Marines turn 4. I now hold 2 objectives as well, which is obviously more than Tyranids, so I gain a 15 and we'll go up to 30. So it's now 30 to 25 in my favour. And then the Infernus Marines have advanced, so they get into the middle of the board. They now hold Objective 2, and hopefully the captain will deal with the Barb Gaunts, or at least enough of them to hold Objective 1, because I do actually have the points lead now, so I can be a bit more aggressive. So he's moved up to the Barb Gaunts. The Infernus Marines can't shoot because they advance, but the captain can. 4 shots hitting on 2s. They all hit. Moving on 4s against Barb Gaunts. 3 with no AP.
4+ armour. Failed 2, so he's a Barb Gaunt.
Then he'll declare a charge. He's in. Captain charging in like that. And the yellow have 6 attacks hitting on 2s. They all hit. Wounding Barb Gaunts on 3s. Strength 5 versus toughness 4. 3 wounds.
3 6s. I think I need to make at least one of these to still hold the objective. I did not. That's 2 damage each.
Yeah. So 1 Barb Gaunt left. It could theoretically kill the captain, though.
Hits on a 4. No.
Oh. But that's the end of the Space Marine turn. So onto the Tyranid turn, where Objective 1 is not held by anybody because there's 1 OC each on it. The Tyranids won't get any victory points.
So I'm not going to fall back because in the very, very, very slim chance the Barb survives, there's a very, very slim chance he'll kill the captain.
Yeah, well, falling back won't really achieve anything anyway because the Space Marines will just shoot and charge the Barb Gaunt again. So the captain does get to hit him though because it's the Tyranid turn. We missed twice.
Oh, yeah.
3s.
No, it's not going to...
4 6s to live.
It's been done before.
No, not quite. So that's the last Tyranid dead, and then of course we would go on to Space Marines turn 5, where they'd score another 15 victory points, and it would be 45 to 25 at the final score. So a seemingly quite solid Space Marine victory, but actually not that many Marines left, and the captain's quite wounded. But anyway, we will recap all of that for you now. So that was the game for issue 11 of Warhammer 40,000 Combat Patrol magazine. How did you think that went?
It was going pretty well. I think if the captain hadn't killed the Tyranid Prime in that turn, I think I would have been in a much better position. Even though the Librarian charged, he didn't kill any Barb Gaunts and I was able to deal with him fairly quickly. That would have been a pretty big setback if he had. And from there it was going fairly well until the Tyranid Prime died, I think.
Yeah, I was pleased to make the charge with the Librarian, but then he actually didn't do anything. His Smite actually did something this game. It actually killed a Von Leaper, but his melee was less than impressive. Once he charged in and kind of bounced off and then was nearly killed by the Tyranid Prime, I thought I was probably on the back foot. But then, the captain just managed to clear everything else out, basically, in the end.
I did consider, after I charged them on Ryan's Leapers, that perhaps it would be better to hide them behind the terrain there, so that you would possibly pull the captain out of position if you wanted to go and deal with them, or the Furnace Marines would have to come off the objective. Because I think the Space Marines only having 3 units to contest 3 objectives, every unit you lose is a really big loss. And I probably should have shot the termagants at the Infernus Marines, because I think if you can pick off the Infernus Marines, that leaves the Marines with 2 characters or only OC1, so they basically have to annihilate everything around an objective to take it, which they can probably do, but the Tyranids will have built up such a huge lead that it won't matter.
Yes, the Space Marines have a total OC of 7 compared to the Tyranids having 29. So you're really reliant on killing things as the Space Marine.
And basically 1 termagant can hold an objective against any of the Marines.
It might seem a bit peculiar that a termagant has OC 2 and a Space Marine, Infernus Marine, or even a character in Terminator armor has OC of only 1, but that's just kind of a slight quirk of the larger game compared to Combat Patrol, where generally speaking, hordes of basic infantry are better at holding objectives than normal ones. Infernus Marines are the most normal infantry unit you get in the Space Marine Combat Patrol, but they're still supposed to be a sort of specialised battlefield unit.
Every faction gets a sort of generalist infantry, kind of rifleman unit that is basically specialised in holding objectives, whereas your more powerful units are, I guess the idea is they're meant to be going forwards to clear off objectives rather than standing back and holding objectives.
Yeah, and I think every other Combat Patrol will have a unit like the Termagants that's better at holding objectives. The Space Marines are actually an anomaly in this collection that they don't have a unit like that. So anyway, that's just something the Space Marines have to live with, and you just basically have to use them quite aggressively. Obviously, controlling objectives is a very important part of the game. It will come up all the time in Combat Patrol games, so it's something to get used to, but it's quite easy to do, fortunately. Adding up OC is not too tricky, and strategies for taking objectives obviously become quite important, like charging onto an objective with a unit that has IOC can sometimes be a good idea, even if it's not as good in melee, because taking objectives at the right time to give you points is ultimately how you tend to win games.
Yeah, and I do think hovering objectives does make certain units look much better than they would otherwise, because if this was just a straight up kill match, the Captain and the Tyranid Prime look amazing, and a unit like the Termagants just looks like, oh, they just get in the way and get killed and don't do any damage, so they're a bit pointless. But having them be OC2, they're actually really good at holding objectives. So it does make some units fit into specific roles a bit more.
And it also gives you some perspective on relative strengths and weaknesses of the different combat patrols as well, because obviously, as we can see, while the Tyranid units are generally individually weaker than the Space Marine ones, there are more of them, and so they are better at holding the battlefield control, for example, whereas the Space Marines can struggle to do that, as we just saw. So certain combat patrols might be better at playing that game than they are at just pure killing stuff. Obviously, with 9 combat patrols to come, we'll see a range of styles, so it should be quite interesting to see how the different ones work out. And then, of course, we've got a couple of new paints. At this stage, we're still adding base coats that are going to be turned into something that looks a bit more impressive later. So if you think any of it looks a bit strange, it's probably because they're building up to do something a bit better with it.
Yeah, and it's still some of the core colours that you're going to be using a lot of in the later combat patrols as well, I imagine.
Yes, they do actually have to supply a paint range that covers 9 different factions. But anyway, I think that's it for this issue and this episode, so let us know what you thought in the comments below. If you played this game, which is, I guess, the largest we've had so far, then let us know how it went. If you have got a different outcome, if you enjoyed the video, then feel free to leave a like and subscribe. But we've been the Tabletop Donkeys, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye for now.